Welcome to the Artist Tavern, your place to settle in, and I'm your host Neil. Here, we're all about those essential, often overlooked elements that really empower artists to do their best work. We'll delve into the practical side of art, the stuff you often only see behind the scenes, from tricky business contracts and legal bits to looking after your physical and mental well-being. You know, it's a real privilege to get a glimpse behind that curtain, to witness artists set aside their anxieties and worries about whether their work is good enough and open up and share their personal space with others. That vulnerability, that courage, something we'll celebrate and explore. We'll discuss themes and topics relevant to all artists who love to create and share their art with the world and make their art a full-time career. So pull up a chair, grab your drink of choice, and get ready to join the conversation. This is episode 1, and today we'll be talking about contracts or service level agreements or terms of service. Essentially, these three things come down to the same thing, but it is quite often overlooked in business discussions for people who just start out as freelancers, and those especially who are new to the world of business. They rely on good faith a little bit too much, and then they end up with situations where they don't get paid, or clients just ghost them, or other service providers who hired them just disappear. And then they have no leg to stand on because there was no written agreement in place. Now, I know this topic usually sounds like a huge snooze fest where you just snooze the alarm, 15 minutes later, snooze it again, 15 minutes later, snooze it again, till eventually you've used up all of your snoozes and you just fall back to sleep and then you oversleep. But this is the kind of stuff that can save you a lot of headaches early on in your career and especially later on in your career. Because the more you work with clients, the more you value contract. Now we're going to be talking about why it's so important to have a written and signed agreement in place before you start any work. It's not just about protecting you as a creative professional. It's also about protecting your client. So let's dive in. Now let's set the stage. Imagine you're a freelance graphic designer or a freelance illustrator, freelance concept artist. Just landed a cool project for a huge brand. You've always wanted to work on this brand, or you've always wanted to work for this client. You're super excited, and you start on the work, and then the client changes the scope of the project. Mid-project, you're busy with maybe a key visual element that needs to be used all over. Client doesn't like it, but 2 weeks ago they approved it, doesn't matter. And then they just decide, no, they want something different. Or the project is finished, everything's been delivered, and then they decide they're not going to pay you what you agreed upon. Or they just go ahead and use your work in a way that was not part of the initial arrangement. It sounds like a nightmare scenario, almost like something from a horror film. I would say that is one of the most accurate parallels that can be drawn to a situation like that, because you as a designer or an artist at that time, you won't know what to do, because when this project started, you placed your faith in this brand and you did not supply them with a contract. Or maybe they didn't supply you with a contract. And then you're stuck in the water with nothing to back yourself up. So that's where a contract straight from the start comes in. It can save you, and it can protect you as a client, and it can protect you as an artist. So these contracts, like I said before, it's a written agreement between you and your client. But it's more than just a written agreement. It is a set of rules between you and the client that clearly outlines the terms and conditions of the work and the scope of the project that will be completed. It spells out things like what exactly you'll be doing, what the client needs to supply you to be able to deliver a successful creative deliverable. It stipulates how much you'll be paid, how you'll be paid, and when you'll be paid. It stipulates who owns the rights to the final product, to the working files, and it also stipulates the usage rights of the final artwork. And it also stipulates what happens if there are changes or problems in the project down the line. It's the safest safety net for both sides, and it ensures that everyone is on the same page from the very beginning. It sets clear communication guides and it manages expectations early on. Now, you as the artist, you are expected to adhere to this very same contract, and you are expected to communicate any changes or requirements early on so that amendments can be made within reason. And the same goes for the client. Anything important needs to be raised early on so that amendments can be made. And then the contract can still stay in place, everyone can still stay happy, and the relationship still stays healthy. Now, taking this a step further, the contract does not just handle only the money or anything that was raised early on. The contract also stipulates communication guidelines. Will you be handling the project over email or WhatsApp, phone calls? I wouldn't trust phone calls as much unless you send follow-up emails with minutes of each call, but still, it stipulates communication guides. It stipulates how many changes or revisions the client can have per project. It also stipulates your process, and it stipulates this timeline of the project, and it lays out the entire scope. It's all about establishing clear expectations and preventing misunderstandings. Think of it this way. When you get a regular job, you sign an employment contract. That contract outlines your salary. It's your responsibilities as the employee. It's a job description. It outlines your working hours and all the other details of your employment, like your benefit, your place of work, settings that might result in termination of the contract, all of those things. That contract as a regular office employee and the contract that you have as a freelancer with a client is exactly the same thing. It's a formal agreement between two professional parties. And when you're working as a freelancer, the faster you can adopt this mindset and understand that it's just a formal agreement, it's going to be easier for you and it's going to be better because you will then be better equipped to treat yourself like a professional and to protect your own interests. Now, I know a lot of creatives don't like to think of themselves as business people. They like to say, I'm an artist, or I'm a designer, or I'm a writer. But here's the thing, you are being paid to deliver a creative service. You are being paid to deliver your skills as a creative. You're being paid for your time and you're being paid for your experience. You are essentially your own business. The faster you can treat yourself as a professional business, you will be able to approach these situations, especially the business negotiations, with a lot more confidence because you will understand your worth and you will be better equipped to advocate for yourself. You will recognize that it's not personal, it's a simple business negotiation. It's also important to remember that working with clients is a two-way street and it's about mutual respect. If you respect your clients, they will respect you. And just like a client has the right to expect you to deliver what you promised, you also have the right to expect the client to honor their side of the agreement. And that same train of thought can carry through to contract termination. If a client has the right to terminate a contract because you as the artist did not fulfill your end of the bargain, you as the artist can terminate the contract because the client did not fulfill their end of the bargain, or whatever reason it may have resulted in a working relationship that does not work out. It happens a lot. Sometimes the service delivery side, the artist, designer, creative professional, they don't deliver on their end or they're unprofessional, then clients want to get out of the contract. Other times, clients are unprofessional or they try to get out of the agreement. Then, when you have these contracts in place, it will protect you in these situations because then you have a leg to stand on when you need to seek legal assistance. It gives you the legal grounds to say, hey, we had an agreement and I expect you to stick to it. And don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. And like I said before, the contract's not just about money, and it's not a scary baseball bat that you can hover over your client's head. Like I said, it protects the client as well. But contracts set this tone for a very healthy professional relationship. When you have reasonable contracts in place, it sets the tone for being reliable and for being trustworthy. It's not about being difficult. Enforcing a contract is not someone as being difficult, it's just being assertive. That is a very healthy quality to have. It's also about protecting your livelihood. It's also about protecting your creative work. So whenever you take on a project, especially when you're just starting out, always get everything in writing. Don't rely on a verbal agreement or a casual email. Invest the time to create a solid contract that outlines all the important details. And when you receive a contract, read the contract carefully and make sure you understand every single clause. If you're not sure about something, ask for clarification. And if you feel unsure about asking the client to clarify anything in a contract, most contracts are standard. You can ask a trusted friend who's also in the field of freelancing to maybe give you some advice or to look over the contract. Or it's also a good idea to contact the lawyer who specializes in contracts to give it a look over and to give you their opinion. It might seem like a lot of work up front, but it is worth it. A well-written contract can prevent so many problems down the line for you and for the client. And it sets the stage for a smooth and successful working relationship. And at the end of everything that's been said and done, it's all about valuing yourself and your work. And when you treat yourself like a professional, you set the tone for how clients will treat you as well. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I look forward to having you around for the next one. Take care.